Hi, everyone. Today I'm excited to have Anuraag Gutgutia, who's a co-founder of TrueFoundry, where he builds production-grade Gen AI infrastructure spanning LLM and MCP gateways. He's an IIT Kharagpur alumni and a former WorldQuant hedge fund leader, where he brings deep expertise across ML infra, platform engineering, and scalable systems. Welcome to the show, Anurag.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Rohit.
Awesome. So, you had an interesting journey, before you started TrueFoundry. But what got you really excited to get into this world of startups?
Yeah, so like when I go back a little bit to my college days, I went to IIT Kharagpur from 2000
Nice.
to 2013. We
Nice.
have a very good culture of entrepreneurship in IIT Kharagpur. So we have this concept of resell, and there are a lot of events that they do where they kind of invite students to participate. And we participated in that during our second year, and we actually raised around 10 lakhs at that point as a part of the program called STEP from Government of India. And our
Nice.
goal was to kind of see if we can, bring e-learning into the bring e-learning content into schools and all. So that didn't go very well. But since then, I've always been excited about building something of my own and creating an impact. And having spent like 6 years in the corporate field with WorldQuant and prior to that with ITC, we were in this boat where me and two of my co-founders, who are my co-founders right now, they were my batchmates from IIT Kharagpur. And we were like, we want to build something that can create impact. So that's what kind of led me into going into the field of startups, this time with a little bit more knowledge, a little bit, what we have seen in the Indian ecosystem around growth and all. That is how kind of started.
Interesting. And you moved on from WorldQuant, but what made you start TrueFoundry? What was the problem statement that you're trying to solve there?
Yeah. So just to give you a little bit of context to it, like WorldQuant was a very, very different organization, right? Like I was
Right.
building trading strategies to trade across global markets, and that was algorithmic trading strategies. A lot of these strategies were written in terms of algorithms. Some of those were AI specific, some of those were not AI specific. So it was a very, very different field. But having spent time there, it's always hard to leave a hedge fund because of all the constraints around that. When we wanted to build something, like my co-founders, Abhishek and Nikunj, who were my batchmates from IIT Kharagpur, we were sitting at a table and we were discussing about, okay, which are spaces that can actually go through an inflection point. And we felt that AI is one that will go through an inflection point because people still haven't been able to leverage AI. When we talk of the tech companies like Facebook, now Meta, Google, they have actually been able to leverage AI very, very efficiently. And this is way back in 2021, this conversation. But a lot of other companies haven't, right? Like, so our thought was, can we bring a Meta-like infrastructure that can allow other companies to really get value out of their machine learning and AI work that they are doing? And for that, we thought that, okay, Meta has an internal platform, which used to be called FB Learner at that point in time. And we thought that that was way, way ahead of its time, right? And we wanted to bring that to other companies around it. This is how that journey started, about trying to bring a tech-first infrastructure to other companies, including legacy companies, so that they can actually fast-track their journey to AI and actually have an impact from that.
Got it. Got it. Super interesting. We are living in the age where companies are spending a lot of money on AI infrastructure. But when we talk to founders and engineers, a lot of them have no idea about what your AI bill actually looks like. So, and it's like ordering food without seeing prices on the menu. So you've been deep in this world with TrueFoundry, so helping companies actually understand and optimize these costs. So help me understand, how do you go about realizing that, is pricing in AI infrastructure really kind of broken?
Understood. So maybe to answer this question, Rohit, I'll talk a little about the change that has happened in AI over the last 3.5 years, right? So when we started TrueFoundry, and you look at what was happening via AI, people were using AI to build recommendation models. People were using AI to build the feeds and which feeds to show which user. And there were only a bunch of companies that were doing it. But 1 year down the line, when ChatGPT got released around 2022, and post that, like suddenly people have realized that now AI can be applied into pretty much every single workflow, right? Like almost every enterprise workflow that we know of today will be managed and governed by AI at a certain point in time because of the agents coming in. With this, the major change that happened was earlier, a lot of these models that were running were on CPUs and they were similar to applications, right? Like it's not like very high cost. Cheap CPUs are much more cheaper. With the coming of the LLMs, a lot of these models that people are using and consuming either as APIs or even hosting them internally for data security, they are hosted on GPUs. And therefore, the per unit cost of calling these models is really, really high. So suddenly the importance of cost in this equation becomes significant. The cost of a GPU can be 100x than a CPU. So that is where that cost thing starts becoming important. And initially, 2023, people were doing early POCs and, because everyone wanted to put money into AI. But when people started to put things into real production and they realized, oh, I have to run this at 100 million user scale, my cost of AI could go up by 50 million, right? If I'm using like, let's say an OpenAI or some of these large language models. And that's where people started to care more about this costs because now you have to actually demonstrate ROI. And therefore, this is definitely a very important part. Like even today, as people are putting things into production, FinOps and being able to understand your AI cost is very important for any company's perspective, not only for things that are exposed and done internally, but also for their customers. Because imagine, I'm a SaaS company and I'm selling my software to 10,000 companies and each company is using my AI. If I don't know how my AI billing is, I'll never be able to price them. So that has started to become more and more important. And at TrueFoundry, what we have started doing is giving people a visibility of that through our AI gateway. So you can actually plug in all your models, whether it's self-hosted or through other providers into that. And you get full observability, full governance around costs and a bunch of other aspects. So yeah.
So super interesting. And what would you think is the most expensive surprise that you see in a company get hit when they start scaling with AI?
Maybe repeat that question.
Expensive surprise, especially when you start scaling with.
Yeah. I think we have seen companies that have suddenly realized that their bills will be 50 million when they actually run that thing in production. And we have also seen, some of the companies having to change and re-architect that entire system to be able to reduce that cost from 50 and 100 of millions to maybe in the range of single digit millions. At scale, like it's very, very important. Earlier when AI was running in like a siloed, just impacting internal workflows, the scale was limited, but when you are running it at actual customer workflows, right? Like some of the companies we work with are using it in their actual customer support, which is exposed to customers in life-changing scenarios. So those kind of situations, you have to be really, really careful because the scale is high and your ROI can just get hit. So yeah.
Right. And I've also seen, cloud companies like AWS, they can send you a bill of around $200,000. And so where does that money even go? Like, what are the actual line items that makes, people, the cost go really high?
I see. So the costs when you are spending in AI could be a bunch of multitude of factors. So let's take it and break it down for an application, right? Let's say there is a travel provider which you kind of go to and book tickets from, and they have launched let's say an AI agent where you can now, instead of going and selecting via drop downs, you can write a statement in chat like, hey, I want to book a ticket to London between these dates and I want like the cheapest tickets between these times. Can you help me book those? And then also go ahead and book the travel for that. So when you're looking at this is an application at the end of the day. So the application is running behind the hood on some compute. So that is the first layer of cost. Like the cost of running the application. Let's say this was on AWS. So the cost of running that application on AWS. So applications will be good to run on CPUs. So, let's say there are 20 CPUs being used to run this. So there will be a cost of that. The second is this application now, because it's agentic application. Behind the hood, it's using some models. So it'll be calling, let's say, the Bedrock or the Azure AI or maybe the Llama, etc. models that are hosted internally. In case it's calling the models from the providers, the second line item will be the cost of actually serving these models. So if this application is running at 100 million users per month, per year, let's say, the cost of serving 100 million requests for the Bedrock or the OpenAI or whatever the model is being used, that is the second line item that is being used, right? The third is, in order to make this application being able to work with the user and remember their context, there is a memory layer. So there will be the cost of memory that is being incurred. And then obviously there is the cost of storage in terms of, okay, all this data and context getting stored somewhere and all. But model cost, the second item is where the costs have gone significantly up. The others used to be the similar in any application, right? Like there will be the cost of compute, storage, memory, etc. But the cost of serving a model that can actually be used behind the application, that has gone significantly up, because now these models are not small models running on CPUs, but are like billion token like models running on GPUs, and the costs have gone 100x. And that is the line item that people need to watch really, really carefully about.
Got it. So is it because the models have become expensive, or do you see in the future also the cost will go down? How do you see it?
The models have definitely become much, much bigger. When there are 70 billion models, there are 120 billion open source model that OpenAI has launched. So the models have definitely become bigger, and because these models have become bigger and huge, like the infrastructure that is required to serve them has become significant, right? Like it needs some much accelerated computing, which is where GPUs come into play. And also, because these models are huge, they need even more power behind the hood to serve them. It's almost like an engine, right? Like if the car has to go up a steep curve, you need more power in its engine. So similarly, the engine, which is in this case this GPU that is serving this, is more powerful. To make a more powerful engine, you need more price, you need more investment. So I think both of these are reasons why the costs have gone significantly up. Although over the last few years, people have also become efficient at serving these models, right? And therefore, you will see that the cost of calling OpenAI has gone down compared
Yeah.
to what it was 2 years ago. And most likely, the cost of models will start coming down over a period of time, because people will become efficient at serving them. People will find better mechanisms like caching that can help you not having to rerun queries and things like that. But the size of the models has increased. So, the applications in which this will go will become 100x, 1000x. So the net cost of AI is definitely going to increase.
Okay, got it. And you mentioned about, using models. Are people going to be using multiple models or going towards a single provider for this?
Yeah, that's a very good question. This question has itself seen a very different evolution over the last 3 years, I would say. In the
Right.
first year after ChatGPT launch, pretty much everything was OpenAI. And very, very few people were using open source models, because open source models at that point had not caught up. So over a period of time, however, in the last 2 or 3 years, we have seen that there are a lot of other considerations that have come around. People do not want to send data out to, say, a commercial provider. Have realized that, Meta has released a bunch of good open source models and have made them really, really powerful. So people are feeling that even a fine-tuned open source model can be as good as using, like, let's say, OpenAI. So I would say it will be a split. People and most of the companies, most of the enterprises we work with are now no longer dependent on a single model provider. Most of them are using multiple models. Some of them are using multiple models from commercial providers itself, like the AWS, Azure, Gemini, Google, etc. But a lot of them are also using multiple models along with commercial providers, plus a mix of their own hosted models. And then very few are using, commercial models plus their own hosted models plus their own fine-tuned models. So I think it'll be a split, and definitely the world will move towards multiple models rather than a single model.
Got it. And you talked about the enterprises, So what's your so how are enterprises navigating this challenge of using multiple models?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think enterprises initially, as I was telling, they were kind of in that mode where, okay, most likely maybe one model provider, if they kind of bring in and allow, that will serve their purpose. But they have realized that you don't want to be vendor logged in into a single provider because of cost reasons, because of also accuracy reasons. Sometimes you will find that some models are good at certain tasks, but some other models are better at other tasks. And then the third thing is they have realized that it's not going to be 5 or 10 applications. Probably it's going to be thousands of applications. If I'm running at those scale, I would want to optimize for how I'm running the inference on this, which means that I might want to have a smaller fine-tuned model that is serving my purpose that I might want to use versus a huge model. So as they have realized this, they have started to kind of bring an infrastructure in place, which is what one of the products we provide as well. We call it TrueFoundry AI Gateway, but in the general industry, you will call it like the AI gateway, or call it like the control plane through which you provide access to all the models behind the hood. So now as a user, you are not interfacing with OpenAI or Bedrock directly, but you are going through this middle layer. And enterprises use the governance to kind of decide which all models they want to plug in here, and people can access it from the other side. It's almost like a payment gateway. What payment gateway does, you don't go and interface with Visa APIs or MasterCard APIs, but the gateway kind of takes care of that. And that's what is happening in AI, where people are abstracting that layer out to allow anyone to access any models that are permissioned within the enterprise behind this gateway. And that also gives you more common observability, that gives you a lot of governance. You can do a lot of optimizations around cost controls and all. So that is what we are seeing enterprises going.
Correct. Super interesting. And earlier, especially when it comes to SaaS companies, there was a seat-based pricing, but now it's like a hybrid-based pricing or a usage-based pricing. So, but there a couple of years back, Snowflake started the usage-based pricing, and there was a bit of a pushback because it's pretty unpredictable when it comes to looking at what is the enterprise value, right? So, how do you make usage-based pricing not feel like a slot machine?
Yeah, I think at least in the AI world, like people have become pretty used to using model usage based pricing, because that is how they are paying all these big providers, whether it's an OpenAI or Azure or Bedrock. So that is something people have become used to. This also kind of goes into the way, the pricing for compute used to work. So when I'm hosting applications, I'm already paying by number of CPUs, memory, etc. So that has actually become pretty common. What has not been common is the orchestration layers in between, like companies like us who are providing a software layer. People still haven't gotten the comfort of using them at a usage base because people don't know the usage. Just to give you an example, if I go to a company and I tell, hey, you can use our gateway and our price is, let's say, 150K if there are 50 million requests per month flowing through it. A lot of people don't even know if 50 million is small. Is it enough for the use cases I'm going to implement? So we run into situations where we would see roughly around 50% of enterprises who want to go with a more flexible model, wherein, okay, give me something that is a base price and then some upgrades on top of that, but I don't want to tie it to actual model usage, but maybe tie it to users and so on. There are some enterprises who already know exactly which applications and they are more comfortable with usage-based pricing, but they definitely don't want a linear increase, because what if they're spending 100 million on models? Like they'll be ending up paying us, if we are charging 10%, 10 million, which they don't want. So there is a more flattening curve. So you kind of start with usage, then it flattens as the usage goes up, and at some point stabilizes. So that is what people are more comfortable with. So we are seeing both these paradigms depending on the type and the size of the enterprise.
But in your view, what would be like a good usage-based pricing? Would it be based on compute hours, or how much it is being metered, or model size?
Yeah, I think depending on what the use case is, right? Like if it is like let's say a compute, in that case, definitely number of CPU hours, number of GPU hours is a pretty good metric for usage-based pricing. In case of models, the number of tokens being consumed is definitely very good metric that people have gotten used to. In terms of where people are using hosting solutions or software, either a percentage of price per GPU or price per model is something that people are starting to get comfortable with. So these are what I would say are good metrics depending on the exact use case. But yeah, GPU hours, CPU hours, percentage top up on top of the total compute used, price per GPU, price per request, those are pretty good metrics. Yeah.
Correct. Interesting. And how do you look at, your billing stack when you're looking at, building that usage-based pricing?
Yeah. So in our case, Rohit, like we serve two types of customers. One are enterprises who will have our software deployed within their VPC, within their environments. And the second are more like, mid-market companies who are okay to use our SaaS or hybrid version. In case of the SaaS or hybrid version, we have two options. You can use like a user-based pricing or a usage-based pricing, depending on which product you are using. So it scales basis number of developers or scales basis the number of flowing through the gateway. In case of on-prem, there is a base price which comes with certain quotas of users and usage, and then scales post that. The challenge for us is in on-prem, it's very hard to get the telemetry data. So we kind of are still in discussions around what kind of telemetry data can be best done so that we can accordingly price the enterprises and give them more visibility around that in a better way.
What do you think is the biggest gap when you see with companies on what we want to charge and what's actually bill for it accurately? Is it metering or invoicing or handling, credits?
Yeah, today I think it is more about the way the pricing will work, right? Because people are not standardized on a single way in which pricing should work. Different enterprises have different expectations of how they want to be kind of charged or how they want to be priced from a perspective of the contract. If we kind of remove that factor, then I think metering will definitely be very important. Not only from a perspective of capturing what is being consumed, but also giving enterprises that visibility on what could be their expectation based on how the trend and the growth of these things are, so that they are able to actually foresee that, okay, if I put 10 applications at this scale, what am I expecting out of this platform if this was a pure usage based pricing, right? So therefore, people probably haven't gone into a pure usage based. It's always usage based with quotas. So, up to this quotas. But if after that quota exceeds, then you take another higher quota, which you discuss at probably, the midway of the journey or the renewal or whatever.
Correct. And especially, Anurag, since you're building products and you would be at a stage stage or at a scale stage, how do you get to decide, this is the core product that we need to build in-house, or this is the infrastructure that we should hire a vendor or a, other company?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes difficult, but given the size of our company, we decide to build only what differentiates us, and anything that can accelerate us will adopt a lot of tools that have already done much better job at it, whether it's the CRM systems or systems for automation around testing, code writing, whatever. So we don't shy away from tooling that can help us accelerate. Our focus is like anything that is core to the business, that can help us differentiate our product is what we will build. But the rest we can try and leverage as many SaaS tools or other providers that are out there that can help us accelerate the journey.
Abbas Khanna was also one of the angels at TrueFoundry, was kind enough to introduce. But you got a marquee set of investors from Sequoia to Intel Capital, and also saw that you have Lenny who came on your cap table, right? So how were you able to invite such high quality investors, and what's your advice to founders who are looking to raise the next round of funding and get some really high quality people on their cap?
Yeah. So at least for us, like from when we started the company, from an investor's perspective, our goal was, can we get investors who either operate in the market we operate in or help us in terms of the domain we are operating in. And we talked to a few investors, and Peak 15, which was Sequoia earlier, they actually have a search program in which they have funded a bunch of SaaS companies, and we felt that they understand the SaaS ecosystem really well. And when they made that offer, we felt they would be great partners in the journey. The same thing was true for US. While we were, in India, and one of my founders, Nikunj, was in US, we did understand that AI is growing more rapidly in the US, and the adoption for SaaS tools or platform as a service is much, much faster in the US. So we wanted investors with a US base. And again, when ENIAC made that offer, we felt they will be great partners given their experience in some of these dev tools that they have done. So that was how we chose our major investors. In terms of angels, we did look around and looked at prior investors of some of the other tooling that we respect, like Postman, companies like Vercel and others. So when we looked at that, we kind of compiled that list. Some of those were introduced to us by our investors or through our network, and some of those were introduced to us by external founders. Like some of the external founders introduced us to Gokul, Lenny, etc. And then you almost create that network through which you get introduced to founders. So our goal was, can we get the top investors who actually have invested prior in SaaS companies? And that kind of helped quite a lot. So the network of founders, who are around similar age as us, but maybe 1 or 2 levels, 3 levels above us, that was probably the most useful.
Very interesting. And you mentioned about how Nikunj was in the US, but for Indian startups or Asian companies, since I understand you're also based out of Singapore, how do you look at your go-to-market engine if you want to expand in the US? Any advice for Indian founders who are looking to expand into the US and developed countries?
Yeah, I think the truth is US is a great market, and it gives you value if you kind of spend time understanding that market. and
Right.
a lot of the customers are referenceable. So
Nice.
I think for any founders who are trying to build in the US market, my recommendation would be at least one of them should definitely spend a good amount of time in the US, if not the full amount of time, at least more than 50% of the time. So even between us, like we keep on traveling every few months to the US, and when we have the pipeline, we'll use that travel for 1 month to then meet all our potential customers or our existing customers. That helps quite a lot. So yeah, I mean, I would say that focus on the geography, decide that geography, don't kind of split it. It's very easy to kind of think that, you can get customers in India because, you know them, but the time it takes to sell in an Indian market and the investment that you'll get might not always be relevant to the space you are operating. India is a great market for consumer fintech, but still there is a lot of growth that can happen in the SaaS world. So start from the market that has already adopted it and has seen that it's much easier, and just fully focus on that. So I think for us that strategy worked really well. We just focused fully on the US markets. We went after customers beyond a certain size, with a lot of them being early enterprises to mid enterprises. And even if you crack one enterprise, that is a much bigger lever than cracking 50, tiny small startups like us.
Interesting. And how about Singapore and Middle East? Are these markets supposed to be looked at once you've cracked the US market, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for us, like we are still very much focused on the US markets. Like we do get inbounds from some of these other markets, but that is what we restricted to. We are not going and doing outbound to spread awareness in these markets, because US itself is very big market. It has a lot of depth and you can grow significantly there. So for us, the focus has been US. I would say up to a certain stage, like US is a great market to focus on if it suits the corresponding domain you are operating in. Other markets can be looked at more from a perspective of using the inbound in those markets to capture, like through SEO, blogs, etc. But there has to be one major market that is a focus up to a certain stage of the company. And we are pretty small. We are still growing. So for us, still US is a major focus.
Got it. Interesting. And if you had to give one piece of advice to founders who want to build an AI product, what should they know about, building products, about pricing, infrastructure?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm just trying to think. I think my single piece of advice would be just being able to iterate really fast, and not tackling for an average answer as a yes. Because there is so much leverage that is out there. And we realize that when we are building as well, that just because you have one customer who said yes doesn't mean, like, you have to really test. We are all in a search for truth at that point. And in a search for truth, you really want customers who want it enough. If you're talking
Yeah.
to 10 customers, do enough number of customers want it and will see value out of it. Because that is one decision that is completely yours, right? Like if you make a wrong decision there and you kind of think what is not true, that'll impanel and impact everything else in the next steps. So it's sometimes better to potentially, be fully true to yourself and
Yeah.
see what is being told is really what you are inferring versus trying to infer what will best suit you. So I think so long as that is there, I think there is a pathway that can always be figured out.
Got it. I've a set of, rapid fire questions. We can quickly go through this. What's the first thing you check in the morning? Is it Slack or email?
For me, it's Slack and email both. Sometimes, like, when we are expecting potentially new customers that can come in, it's emails. But when it's about current customers, it's Slack. But we use Slack quite effectively. So I would say I split between both of them.
Okay. And what's one thing about startups which nobody prepares you for?
I think there's a lot of hustle. There's a lot of rediscovering and a search for truth. You realize, when you are in a job, you can fake things, but really as a founder, you cannot, because then you are lying to yourself, and there are other people who you are responsible to. So you are really in a search of truth. Let me think, and that itself has a very deep connotation, which people don't prepare you for sometimes.
Correct. No, I absolutely love the answer. A habit that you picked after becoming a founder.
I think it's more about being okay to execute without the best outcome. I think that is something that you realize that a lot of times, you will not have the best data to kind of make decisions, but so long as you keep on doing, like, some of those things will work. So the single best advice is keep the action going. Like, I think some of those things work. And like, so we have in our culture book, one of the things that, there is no strategy. It's always an execution plan. And every execution plan is basically a point of things that you will execute. It's not a talk about, oh, should we do this or not? Like, that is good to discuss, but that can only be 10%. The rest 90% has to be execution. So I think that is something that we have tried to narrate a lot, and you realize that more when you are working on a startup.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there any product other than TrueFoundry that you truly admire?
Yeah, there are a lot of products. I think OpenAI is a great product in itself.
Yeah.
The simplicity of that product, the way they have built it, it's truly good. Figma is another product that I really like in terms of how it has changed the way designers use. And the other product that since a long time we use and somehow it has never changed has been PowerPoint. Like I really cannot imagine any product that is as good as. So those are
True.
products that have really crept into your veins, and like people push me to Google Slides and Microsoft SharePoint, but I keep going back to PowerPoint and I'm like, okay, this is like a great product. So,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think these are some great products. We're going to put that in show notes. And you know what helps you reset when things get overwhelming? Do you have any set of meditation or stress relieving that you do?
I think no, I don't have like very good rituals in terms of specific meditation. But one of the things that I have learned is you don't have to fix everything. Like, by design, it is supposed to be a scrappy journey. Things will be bad. Some folks won't work out in the way you'd want. Some things won't work out. You just have to keep going and you have to be okay and not try to fix. The moment you try to fix everything, that is when the pain increases. But so long as you realize that this too shall pass and it's not going to impact or change the entire thing for you, I think you realize that okay, things are pretty good.
Got it. And I've seen the smartest people always keep changing in their mind. But is there any belief that you earlier had on, but now it is you completely change your mind about?
I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I think maybe this is something prior and later. So before a startup, when you are outside a startup, you are seeing other people build startups. A lot of time it might feel you want to get product-led growth and all the fancy terms where everyone is adopting the product. When you are building a product for this as, when we first proposed the idea that let's go and actually try sales to enterprises versus, very small companies and developers, like we internally also had a lot of debates. And even for me, it was not a clear choice. But at least one thing that I have realized is we should think about for whom the value is maximum. And if the value is maximum for a bigger company and an enterprise, and so be it. It might be a hard part, but that should be the answer, and not whether you want to do a product-led growth or whether you want to go an enterprise top-down motion. I think so. If I were to do and build a platform as a service company again, and I would probably again go down the route of selling to bigger companies rather than very, very small companies. So that is something that has reaffirmed and become more stronger, which I would probably not have had a very strong viewpoint prior.
Got it. Interesting. And Anurag, what's the best way people can reach out to you and know more about TrueFoundry?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty available on my email. It's Anuraag, my first name at truefoundry.com, and happy to connect with folks over LinkedIn. Always happy to help fellow founders and learn from, folks who have actually built great companies in whatever way I can. Thank you so much.
Also, put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking the time speaking to us. Really enjoyed my conversation.
Thanks for having me, Rohit. Like, it's a pleasure speaking to you. Looking forward to it.